I got an invitation in the mail, fancy cardstock, gold lettering. You are cordially invited to the grand opening of Summit Ridge Community Park. I stared at it for a long time because that park, they built it on my land, 5 acres I'd owned. For 10 years, woods, trees, my quiet escape. The HOA next door decided it was theirs and started building without asking. I called them, sent emails, showed them my deed in person. They ignored me, told me their surveyor confirmed ownership and I was wrong. So they built a $150,000 park pavilion, playground walking paths, cut down 12 of my trees, tore up half an acre. All while I begged them to stop. Then they sent me this invitation. Like I should celebrate what they stole. That's when I knew exactly what to do. I called a newspaper reporter, told her everything. She agreed to bring a camera crew to their ribbon-cutting ceremony. I showed up with my deed. It's an independent survey, and proof I'd warned them multiple times, 200 people there, county officials, local media. Everyone's smiling and clapping for this beautiful new park. Then I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was clear. I own this land. Here's proof. The HOA president's face went white. The county commissioner took my deed, read it, looked at her, asked one question. Did you verify ownership before you built this? She couldn't answer. The whole ceremony fell apart in front of everyone. Cameras captured it all. 3 weeks later, I stood on my property and watched excavators tear down every single thing they'd built. The $150,000 pavilion, the playground, ate all of it. They tried to steal my land and throw a party to celebrate it. I showed up and took it back 10 years ago. My aunt left me 5 acres of land. 5 acres of woods, mostly oak and pine, with a small clearing in the middle. The property sat quiet, 20 minutes outside town, surrounded by nothing but trees and the occasional deer. The deed was clean, paid off. No mortgage, no liens. My aunt bought it in the 80s for next to nothing, and when she passed, it became mine. I paid property taxes every year, maybe $300, and that was it. No HOA, no rules. It's just land. I loved that property. Not because it was valuable, because it was peaceful. On weekends, I'd drive out there, park by the clearing, and just walk. No trails, no agenda. Just me and the trees. For 8 years, nothing around me changed. My property bordered state forest on one side and empty land on the other. Hunters would ask permission during deer season, always respectful. That was the kind of place it was. Quiet, simple. Then 2 years ago, a development company bought the 100 acres next to mine. Within 6 months, they'd cleared half of it and started building Summit Ridge a gated luxury community. Big homes, brick and stone, 3-car garages, clubhouse, signs advertising exclusive living and resort-style amenities. I watched it go up from my clearing. Construction noise was annoying, but I figured once it was done, things would settle. The property line between us was clear. Old stone boundary markers, placed decades ago, marked exactly where my land ended, and theirs began. Heavy granite stones, some with carved numbers, half buried and covered in moss. I'd walked that line 100 times. At first, the new neighbors were fine. Residents would drive past on the access road. Few waved. I waved back. They had their gated community. I had my woods. It worked. I didn't live on the land full time. I had a house in town where I worked during the week. The 5 acres was my weekend escape, my quiet place. About 6 months ago, I noticed surveyor trucks near the property line. Not on my land, just close. I figured Summit Ridge was mapping utilities or planning roads. Didn't think much of it. A few weeks later, I saw orange construction flags, small plastic ones on wire stakes, scattered through the woods near the boundary. I walked over to check. Some were on the HOA's side, but several were past the stone markers. On my property, I called the Summit Ridge HOA office the next day. A woman answered, polite but rushed. Hi, I own the land adjacent to your development. I noticed construction flags on my property. Oh, that's just routine maintenance on the common area. Common area. My land isn't part of your HOA. The flags are for our community park project. Nothing to worry about. They're on my side. Of the property line? I don't think so. Our surveyors marked the boundaries. Everything's within HOA limits. My chest tightened. I've got the deed. I know where my line is. If you have concerns, submit them in writing to the board. But I'm sure it's fine. She thanked me and hung up before I could respond. I stood there holding my phone, staring at the flags in the distance. My jaw was clenched. She dismissed me like I didn't know my own property, like I was the one making a mistake. I wanted to trust this was just confusion, a surveyor error, something that could be fixed with a simple conversation. I didn't want to escalate over a few flags? Not yet. The following Saturday, I drove out to check again. The flags were still there. But now there were more, at least 20 of them, scattered across a wide section of my woods. All on my side of the stone markers. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. I walked the entire boundary line that afternoon, checking every marker. They were all still in place. Heavy granite stones, some carved with property numbers from the 1800s, exactly where they'd been for over a century. Solid proof of where my land began, and every single flag was past them. On my property, I took photos. Lots of them. The markers, the flags, the distance between them. I needed documentation. When I got home, I sent an email to the HOA board. Attached the photos. Explained calmly that the flags were on my private property, not their common area. Offered to meet and walk the boundary line together. No response. A week passed. The flag stayed. I called the HOA office. Left a message. No callback. 2 weeks. Still nothing. The silence was worse than an argument. It meant they weren't confused. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they didn't care. Every time I drove out to the property now, I felt something I'd never felt there before. Anxiety. That land had always been my escape. Now it felt like something I had to defend. 3 weeks after I sent the email, I visited. On a Sunday morning, perfect weather. Clear sky, cool breeze. I parked in the clearing and started walking toward the boundary line. That's when I heard it. Heavy machinery. The deep rumble of diesel engines, loud enough to shake the ground. My heart started pounding. I walked faster, then broke into a jog. When I reached the boundary line, I stopped cold. 2 excavators. Massive yellow machines sitting on my property 50 feet past the stone markers. The ground around them had been torn up, trees cut down at least a dozen oak and pine, some of them decades old. Stumps ground out. Dirt leveled into a flat clearing. The smell hit me. Diesel exhaust mixed with fresh-cut wood and torn earth. They were building something. Gravel base, maybe for a trail or parking area. Equipment sat idle. It was Sunday. No crew working, but the damage was already done. I stood there, hands shaking, staring at the destruction. Dozen mature trees, gone. My land torn apart without permission, without even a conversation. This wasn't confusion about property lines. This wasn't a surveyor mistake. This was trespassing, destruction, theft, and standing there looking at those excavators on my land. I realized something cold and certain. They weren't going to stop, not unless I made them. I didn't wait until the next weekend, drove back out there 2 days later, Thursday afternoon, took a half day off work. I needed to see what was happening. Needed to know if those excavators were still there. They were, and they'd brought friends to excavators. Concrete truck, flatbed loaded with lumber. At least 6 workers in hard hats and high-vis vests, moving around like they owned the place because they thought they did. I parked my truck at the clearing and walked toward them, my heart hammering. The closer I got, the worse it looked. Massive section of my woods, Azeli, half an acre, had been cleared. Trees cut down and hauled away. Stumps ground out. The earth scraped flat and raw. Dark soil exposed like a wound. The smell hit me before I reached them. Diesel fuel, sawdust, and fresh-turned dirt. I stopped at the edge of the destruction, my chest tight. 12 trees. Gone. I counted the stumps as I walked past them. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. Some of those oaks had been there longer than I'd been alive. 50, 60 years old, They were just circular scars in the ground. My hands started shaking. Not from fear. From rage so hot and pure, I could barely think. A man in a yellow hard hat stood near the excavator, looking at blueprints spread across the hood of a white pickup. I walked straight up to him. "What are you building here?" He looked up, surprised, but not concerned. "Community pavilion and park. Should be done in about 6 weeks." He nodded at the clearing like he was showing off his work. "This is my property." His expression shifted. Guarded now. No, it's not. "This is Summit Ridge Common Area. I own this land. I have the deed." He folded his arms. "Look, I don't know what to tell you. We have permits. The HOA hired us. They confirmed ownership before we started. This is their land. It's not them. Take it up with the HOA." He turned back to his blueprints. "I'm just doing my job. Stop working." He looked at me again, irritation creeping into his voice now. "You can't do that. We're on a schedule, and we have legal authorization to be here. You're trespassing. You cut down my trees without permission." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the site manager. And if you keep interfering, we'll call the sheriff and have you removed for trespassing." Trespassing. On my own land. I turned and walked back to my truck before I said something I'd regret. Got in. Slammed the door so hard the whole frame shook. Sat there gripping the steering wheel, breathing hard, staring at the destruction. 12 trees, half an acre cleared. And they were acting like I was the problem. I drove straight to the Summit Ridge HOA office. The office was in the clubhouse, a fancy brick building near the gated entrance, marble floors, leather furniture, fresh flowers on the reception desk. I walked in without knocking. The woman at the front desk looked up, startled. "I need to speak to the president now. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I own the land your construction crew is destroying, so I think we need to talk." Her eyes widened. She picked up the phone, murmured something, then nodded toward a hallway. Second door on the right. Linda Harmon sat behind a large desk in an office that smelled like expensive candles and new carpet. Maybe 50 blonde hair, pulled back tight, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my truck payment. She didn't stand when I walked in, just looked at me with this cool, detached expression, like I was a minor inconvenience. "You must be the property owner," she said. Not a question. Statement. Like she'd been expecting this. "You're building on my land." "No, we're building on HOA common area." She turned her computer monitor toward me without hesitation. A survey map filled the screen. Bright colors, clean lines. A section labeled Summit Ridge Common Area. Parcel 3 covered exactly where my woods used to be. I stared at it, seeing. My land, my 5 acres labeled as someone else's property, made my stomach drop. Like reality was being rewritten on a screen in front of me. That's wrong. This was done by a licensed surveyor, cost us $12,000. It's accurate. What? Pulled out my phone, showed her photos of the stone boundary markers. These had been there since the 70s. "Your surveyor missed them, or ignored them." She barely glanced at the screen. "Old markers get moved, shifted. They're not reliable." I pulled the deed from my jacket, pocket-tied, started carrying it everywhere, and put it on her desk. "Is my deed. Recorded with the county. Legal description matches those markers exactly." She picked it up, looked at it for maybe 5 seconds, put it back down. "Your deed must be outdated. Property lines get adjusted, boundaries change, not without my knowledge, not without a sale." She leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "Mr. Eames, sorry, I didn't catch your name." I didn't give it to her. "We've invested $80,000 into this project so far. Permits filed, contractors hired, materials purchased. The work continues. On my land." "On HOA land," she corrected, voice flat. "And if you continue to interfere with our contractors, I'll have no choice but to pursue trespassing charges." The room felt too small, too hot. The hum of the air conditioning, suddenly loud in my ears. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "You're threatening me with trespassing charges. You're being on my own property. I'm informing you of the consequences of interfering with a legal construction project." She stood, smoothing her blazer. "If you genuinely believe there's a boundary dispute, you're welcome to hire your own surveyor and take it up with the county. But until then, Our work continues. I want you to stop. Today. That's not going to happen. I'll get a lawyer. She smiled. Not warm, not kind. The smile of someone who's already decided they've won. Go ahead, but I'd suggest you consider the cost. Legal disputes over property lines can take years. Cost tens of thousands of dollars. Are you prepared for that? I stared at her. This woman, sitting in her expensive office in her gated community, threatening me with the cost of defending my own land. Like my inability to afford a drawn-out legal battle was her leverage, and maybe it was. I picked up my deed, folded it, put it back in my pocket. You're making a mistake. I don't think so. She walked to the door, opened it. Have a nice day. Got in my truck. Sat there in the parking lot staring at the gated entrance with its stone pillars and decorative landscaping. Everything about Summit. Ridge screamed money, power, control, and they were using all of it to take what was mine. I drove home. Googled property dispute lawyer near me. Called 3 firms. Left messages with all of them. One called back that evening. Said he could meet Monday. His retainer was $5,000. I said yes without hesitating, because Linda was right. About one thing. This was going to cost money, a lot of it. But she was wrong about something more important. She thought I'd look at the cost, the time, the fight ahead, and just walk away. She had no idea how wrong she was. The lawyer's name was David Mitchell. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, the kind of guy who'd seen every property dispute trick in the book. I met him Monday morning in his office downtown and laid out everything. The deed, the photos of the stone markers, the construction. Linda's refusal to stop. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You're betting you can't afford to fight, can I? Depends. How much is that land worth to you? It's not for sale. He nodded. Then we fight. You need to know this will take time and money. Property disputes aren't quick. Talking months, maybe longer. And legal fees add up fast. I signed the retainer agreement that day. $5,000. Writing that check hurt. It was money I'd been saving for a new roof. But I didn't have a choice. First thing, David said, we get our own survey. Independent, licensed, ironclad. If their surveyor screwed up or lied, we prove it. He made calls that afternoon. By Wednesday, a surveyor was walking my property with GPS equipment and a crew. Took them 2 full days to map everything. Every boundary line. Every stone marker. The results came back a week later. I was at work when David called. You sitting down? What did they find? It's a pavilion, playground. Walking paths, all of it sits squarely on your land. Not even close to the property line. Their survey is off by nearly 200 feet. Relief hit me so hard my hands started shaking. So I'm right. You're right. And they knew it. No legitimate surveyor makes a 200-foot mistake. Either they lied, or the HOA told them what result they wanted, so they stop now, right? It was quiet for a second. Not necessarily. Being right and making them stop are 2 different things. But this gives us leverage. David sent a demand letter that Friday, certified mail, attached our survey, demanded immediate cessation of construction, removal of all structures, and restoration of the property. Gave them 72 hours to respond. Their lawyer responded in 48 hours, denied everything, said the HOA's survey was conducted by a reputable firm, that our survey must be flawed, and that construction would continue as planned. Threatened to countersue for harassment and interference if we didn't back off. I read that letter standing in David's office. My hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. We just proved they're on my land, and they're threatening me. They're bluffing, David said. They know they're wrong. They're just hoping you'll fold before this gets expensive. I'm not folding. Good. Because this is about to get worse. He was right. Construction didn't just continue. It accelerated. Over the next 3 weeks, crews worked longer hours, weekends, even at night, under floodlights. I drove out there every few days, and each time there was more. The pavilion went up first, a massive covered structure with custom stonework, cedar beams, and pendant lighting. Then came the playground, high-end equipment, rubberized safety surface, benches, then landscaped walking paths with decorative pavers and solar lights. It was beautiful, expensive, professional, and every bit of it was on my property. I called the HOA office repeatedly, left messages, sent emails with the survey attached, begged them to stop, to at least pause construction until the boundary dispute was resolved. Nothing complete. Deliberate silence. That silence ate at me more than the construction. It wasn't just ignoring me. It was a message. We don't care what you say. We're doing this whether you like it or not. Then I got another letter. Not from the HOA office. From their law firm. Cease and desist. It accused me of harassment. Said I was interfering with a legal construction project. Threatened to pursue trespassing charges and a restraining order if I continued to harass contractors or HOA board members. I sat at my kitchen table reading it, rage boiling in my chest. My jaw was clenched so tight I could feel the pressure in my skull. They were threatening me for trying to stop them from building on my land. David filed a formal lawsuit the next day. Trespassing, destruction of property, conversion, unjust enrichment. Asked for injunctive relief to halt construction immediately. The judge scheduled a hearing for 3 weeks out. By then, the park was finished. I drove out there the Saturday after completion. It was early May now, 4 months since this nightmare. Started the gates were open for some kind of HOA event. So I parked on the access road and walked in. The pavilion gleamed in the afternoon sun. Stone pillars, vaulted ceiling, ceiling fans, built-in speakers. The playground looked like something from a resort. Swings, slides, climbing structures, all color-coordinated. The walking paths wound through newly planted trees and flower beds. A metal plaque was mounted near the pavilion entrance, Summit Ridge Community Park, a space for families to gather and grow. I stood there staring at it. My chest felt tight, my throat burned. $150,000. That's what David estimated the project cost. All of it on my land. While I'd spent $8,000 in legal fees trying to stop them, kids were playing on the equipment. Parents sitting on benches, chatting, smiling. Happy families enjoying a beautiful park, built on land they stole from me. I turned and walked. Back to my truck before anyone noticed me. Sat in the driver's seat with my hands on the wheel, breathing hard. I'd never felt so powerless in my life. Flyers appeared everywhere the next week. Telephone poles, community bulletin boards, the grocery store, bright glossy flyers with photos of the pavilion. Join us for the grand opening of Summit Ridge Community Park. Ribbon cutting ceremony Saturday, May 18th, 2 p.m. Special guests include county officials and local media, food, music, and family fun. I brought one to David's office, dropped it on his desk. They're throwing a party, I said. Lanty read the flyer, didn't smile, but something shifted in his expression. This might actually work in our favor. How? Public event. Media present. County officials. If we can prove ownership at the ceremony in front of everyone, he tapped the flyer. Public humiliation is a powerful motivator for settlement. They'll want this resolved quickly and quietly before it becomes a scandal. So what do? We show up. With the survey, with the deed, with proof, and we make sure everyone there knows the truth. I stared at him. You want me to crash their grand opening? Want you to reclaim your property? Publicly? That night, I sat on my couch staring at the flyer. County officials, local media. 200 residents celebrating. Park built on stolen land. Watching someone celebrate something they stole from you leaves this sick, hollow feeling in your stomach. Like justice is optional and you're the only one who cares. But David was right. If I couldn't stop them from building it, at least I could stop them from pretending it was theirs. I called the local newspaper the next morning, asked for the reporter covering the ceremony. A woman named Jennifer answered. Hi, I'm calling about the Summit Ridge Park opening. Are you with the HOA? No, I own the land they built it on. Silence then. What? I explained everything. The boundary dispute, the survey, the lawsuit. She listened, asked questions, took notes. "This is a hell of a story," she said finally. "Can you prove it?" "I've got the survey, the deed, and photos. I'll be at the ceremony, so will I with a camera crew." After we hung up, I sat there, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope, mixed with fear, because this could go very wrong very fast. But Linda and her HOA thought Saturday would be their victory lap. Proof that they could do whatever they wanted and no one could stop them. They had no idea what was coming. After I hung up with Jennifer from the newspaper, I sat there staring at my phone. Reality was setting in. I'd just committed to publicly. Confronting the HOA at their grand opening ceremony, in front of 200 people, with cameras rolling, my hands started shaking. I called David. "I just talked to a reporter," I said. "She's covering the ceremony with a camera crew." "Then, you did what?" I told her everything. Survey, the trespassing, the lawsuit. She said it's a hell of a story. It is, but public confrontation is risky. If this goes wrong, you become the villain, the bitter neighbor, disrupting a nice community event. I know. Do you? Because once this is public, there's no taking it back. You'll be on camera. Your name will be in the paper. The HOA will spin it however they can to make you look crazy. My stomach tightened. "So you think I shouldn't do it?" I didn't say that. Said it's risky. But if it works, ... double quotes. It works, you'll have leverage we could never get in court. Public pressure moves settlements faster than any judge. What do I need? Everything. Every piece of proof you have. Over the next few days, David prepared the documentation. Deed, survey, tax records, photos of the boundary markers, timeline of construction. He made 20 copies and organized them in folders. "Don't hand these out unless you have to," he said. "But if people start asking questions, you give them proof. Lots of it." He walked me through what to say. "Keep it simple. Keep it factual. I own this land. Here's my deed. Here's an independent survey proving it. The HOA built this park without my permission. I practiced at home, stood in my bathroom staring at the mirror like an idiot, rehearsing. I own this land. Here's my deed." Over and over until it didn't sound so shaky. But even saying it to my own reflection made my heart race. I wasn't good with crowds. Never had been. The idea of standing up in front of 200 people while cameras recorded me made me want to throw up. The financial strain was getting worse. David's retainer was gone. His hourly rate was eating through my savings. I was up to $8,000 now in legal fees. Between that and the stress, I'd lost 12 pounds in 6 weeks. Wasn't eating right. Couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake at 3 a.m. doing math. How much had I spent? How much more could I afford? My boss asked if I was. Okay. I lied and said I was fine, but I wasn't fine. I was exhausted. Terrified this whole plan would fall apart, and I'd be left with nothing but debt and destroyed land. 1 week before the ceremony, an envelope arrived. Summit Ridge HOA return address. Inside was an invitation on heavy cardstock with gold lettering "You are cordially invited to the grand opening of Summit Ridge Community Park." ... They'd invited me. Probably a mass mailing sent to every address in the area. They had no idea one of those addresses belonged to the guy whose land they'd stolen. I stared at that invitation for a long time. My first instinct was to rip it up. But then something shifted. A small, angry part of me that was tired of being ignored and dismissed. I filled out the RSVP card. Checked, yes, I will attend. Wrote my name clearly in black ink. My hand was shaking as I dropped it in the mailbox. The week dragged. Every day felt like a month. I went to work, came home, obsessed over the plan. What if Jennifer didn't show? What if Linda had security kick me out before I could say anything? What if people just didn't care? David called 3 days before the ceremony. "I'm coming," he said. "I'll be in the crowd, just in case." In case of what? In case you need legal support or backup. Or ... double quotes. Look, I don't know how this is going to go, but you shouldn't be alone. That didn't make me feel better. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep at all, just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every scenario. Best case, I present the evidence. The reporter covers it. The HOA is humiliated and forced to settle. Worst case, I look insane, get escorted out by security, and the lawsuit drags on for years, somewhere. Around 4 a.m., I gave up. Made coffee, sat on my porch, watching the sun come up. The folder of documents on the table next to me. I flipped through them one more time. The deed, the survey, the photos. All of it true, all of it provable. I wasn't wrong. I knew I wasn't wrong. I just had to make everyone else see it. At noon, I got a text from Jennifer, confirmed for 2 p.m. Camera crew ready. Where should we meet? I texted back. Main pavilion. Be there. I stood in the shower for 30 minutes, water running over me, trying to calm down. Put on clean jeans and a button-down shirt. Grabbed the folder. Checked it 3 times to make sure everything was there. Then I got in my truck and drove toward Summit Ridge. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My heart was pounding. Every instinct told me to turn around, to go home, to let the lawyers handle it. But I kept driving, because Linda and her HOA thought today would be their victory. A celebration of their beautiful new park. Proof that they could do whatever they wanted and get away with it. They had no idea I was about to walk in with proof, as a lawyer and a reporter with a camera crew. And for the first time in months, I wasn't the one who should be scared. They were. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. Clear blue sky. 72 degrees. It's the kind of day that makes you think everything's going to be fine. I didn't feel fine. I felt like I was going to throw up. I got to Summit Ridge at 1:30. Early, wanted to see the setup before the crowd. Arrived. The gates were open. Security waving cars through. I parked near the back and walked toward the pavilion. It looked even better than before. Banners hung from the cedar beams. White folding chairs arranged in neat rows facing a small stage. A red ribbon stretched across the pavilion entrance. Tables with catered food lined one side, silver trays, white linens. Servers in black vests. This wasn't just a ribbon cutting. This was a production. The plaque near the entrance gleamed. Summit Ridge Community Park EST 2025. A space for families to gather and grow. I stood there staring at it, my chest tight. $150,000 on my land. We're about to celebrate like heroes. People started arriving. Families with kids. Couples in polo shirts and sundresses. Everyone smiling, holding programs, taking photos. 2 news vans pulled up. I spotted Jennifer from the newspaper with her camera crew setting up near the stage. She saw me, gave a subtle nod. She was ready. David arrived at 1:50 positioned. Himself on the opposite side of the crowd, strategic. If things went wrong, he could reach me fast. My phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer. Ready when you are? We'll be rolling. I texted back. After the speeches.
My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. At 2 o'clock, Linda Harmon stepped onto the stage. She wore a cream-colored dress, hair perfect, makeup flawless. She held oversized ceremonial scissors and she glowed with pride and satisfaction. Welcome, everyone. Her voice carried across the pavilion through speakers. Thank you so much for joining us on this special day. Applause. Lots of it. 200 people clapping and smiling. Watching her stand there, basking in applause for something built on stolen land, made my stomach turn. But I stayed quiet. Waited. 2 years ago, Linda continued, when Summit Ridge was just an idea, we envisioned a community where families could come together. Where children could play. Where neighbors could connect. Today, that vision becomes reality. She gestured toward the pavilion. This beautiful space represents our commitment to excellence. To creating something lasting. Something meaningful. She paused for effect. Our land has become a gathering place for generations to come. Our land. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. She thanked the contractor. Thanked the board members. Thanked the residents. Every word felt like a knife. Then she introduced the guests. We're honored to have with us today County Commissioner Patricia Alvarez and Councilmember Johnson. Two officials stood from the front row, waved politely. They were there for the photo op, nothing more. Local politicians at a community ribbon cutting. Linda cut the ribbon. Cameras flashed. People cheered. Kids ran toward the playground. Parents followed, laughing, taking pictures. Then Linda stepped back to the microphone. And now, I'd like to invite anyone who'd like to say a few words. I would. My voice came out louder than I expected. Shakier, but louder. The pavilion went quiet. Not completely silent, but conversation dropped. Heads turned. 200 faces looking at me standing in the back with a folder under my arm. Linda's smile froze. I'm sorry, do we know you? Yes. I started walking forward. My legs felt like they might give out, but I kept moving. Through the crowd. People stepping aside. Whispers starting. Jennifer's camera swung toward me. Recording. I reached the front. Looked at Linda. Her face had shifted from confused to wary. My name is on the RSVP list, I said. I was invited. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She didn't recognize me. We'd only met once, in her office, months ago. And you are. I own this land. The whispers stopped. Complete silence now. Linda's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion. Recognition. Then something close to panic. That's not, she turned to the board members sitting in the front row. This is HOA property. We have documentation. So do I. I held up the folder. I've owned this land for 10 years. I have the deed. I have an independent survey conducted 3 months ago. I have property tax records showing continuous payment. And I have photos of the original boundary markers that prove every inch of this pavilion, that playground, and those walking paths are on my property. I looked out at the crowd. Some faces skeptical. Some interested. Some starting to look uncomfortable. I sent the HOA copies of all of this, I continued. Multiple times. Before construction started. During construction. I begged them to stop. To verify ownership. They ignored me. I looked back at Linda. And they built anyway. Linda's face had gone from tan to pale. That's absolutely ridiculous. This is HOA common area. Our surveyor confirmed. Your surveyor was wrong. Or lied. I opened the folder. Pulled out the survey. Held it up. This is an independent survey conducted by a licensed professional. It shows your project is 200 feet onto my property. County Commissioner Alvarez stood up from her seat. Walked toward me. May I see that? I handed her the folder. She opened it. Flipped through the pages slowly. The deed. The survey. The photos of boundary markers. Her expression shifted from curious to concerned to angry. She looked at Linda. Did you verify ownership before starting construction? Of course we did. We have our own survey. Then why is the county deed showing different ownership? Alvarez held up my deed. This is recorded. Registered. Current taxes paid. There must be some mistake. Ms. Harmon, did this man contact you before construction began? Linda's mouth opened. Closed. Her hands were shaking now. There was some confusion about boundaries, but our surveyor assured us. Did he contact you? Yes or no? Yes. And you continued construction anyway? Silence. The crowd wasn't quiet anymore. Murmurs turning into full conversations. Residents asking each other what was happening. Some looking at Linda with shock. Others with anger. Jennifer pushed forward with her camera crew, microphone extended. "Sir, you're saying this entire park was built on your private property without permission?" "Yes." "And you notified the HOA multiple times?" "Multiple times. I have emails. Certified letters. Phone records." She turned to Linda. "Ms. Harmon, can you comment on these allegations?" Linda just stood there, oversized scissors still in her hand, staring at me like I'd materialized out of nowhere. Her face was red. Her hands shaking. Her eyes darting between the commissioner, the cameras, and the crowd that was no longer applauding. Councilmember Johnson stood up. "I think we need to pause this event until ownership can be verified." "It's already verified." Linda's voice was sharp now, desperate. "We invested $150,000 in this project. We have permits." "Did you lie on the permit applications?" Alvarez asked, voice cold. Linda's face went white. A woman in the front row stood up. "You told us this was HOA land. You said it was approved. Legal. It is legal. This man is just. I have proof." I looked at the crowd. "Anyone who wants to see the documentation, it's right here. Deed. Survey. Tax records. All of it." People started moving forward. Hands reaching for copies. David appeared at my side, helping distribute them. Residents flipping through pages, reading, comparing the survey map to the land around them. One man looked up from the survey. Looked at Linda. "This shows the boundary markers. The old stone ones. Those have been there for decades." Another woman, "I've seen those markers. On the trails. They're definitely past our property line." Linda's confidence, that smug, untouchable confidence, crumbled in real time. She stood there on her stage, surrounded by her beautiful park, her expensive ceremony, her guests and media. And I'd just proven, in front of everyone, that it was built on stolen land. She'd spent $150,000. Invited the media. Threw a party. And it was all falling apart. The crowd erupted. Not whispers anymore. Full conversations. People standing up. Pointing at the survey images on the screen. Taking photos. Recording video. Linda stood frozen on the stage, oversized scissors still gripped in one hand, her face drained of color. Not pale. White. Like someone had pulled a plug and let all the blood drain out. County Commissioner Alvarez held up my deed. "This is a recorded property deed. Transferred through inheritance 10 years ago." She pulled out her phone, made a call, spoke quietly for 30 seconds. Hung up. Looked at Linda with ice in her eyes. "County records confirm it. This parcel is privately owned. Has been for decades." The murmuring got louder. People pulling out phones. Taking photos. The news cameras swung from me to Linda to the screen showing the dueling surveys. Linda finally found her voice. Shaky but defiant. "That's impossible. We had this land surveyed by a licensed professional. This is Summit Ridge Common Area. We have permits. We have. Your survey was wrong." David stepped forward, briefcase in hand. He'd been standing at the edge of the crowd, waiting for this exact moment. Because he'd been planning it for weeks. "I'm David Mitchell, attorney representing the landowner." He walked straight to the stage. "Your HOA hired a surveyor 8 months ago. That surveyor made a critical error, or deliberately falsified the results. We hired an independent surveyor 3 weeks ago. Licensed. Bonded. No connection to either party." He pulled out his laptop. One of the board members, looking panicked, helped him connect it to the presentation screen they'd set up for the ceremony. Two surveys appeared side by side. The HOA's on the left. Ours on the right. My heart was pounding watching this. Seeing it all laid out so clearly. So undeniably. David used a laser pointer. The red line shows the property boundary according to your survey. The blue line shows the actual boundary based on recorded legal descriptions and GPS verification. The lines were nearly 200 feet apart. Gasps from the crowd. Actual gasps. Someone said, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. Your survey, David continued, voice steady and clinical, placed the boundary here. He pointed to a spot well into my woods. The actual boundary, confirmed by stone markers placed in 1967 and verified by county records, is here. Photos appeared on screen. The stone markers. Moss-covered, half-buried, but clearly carved with property numbers. Each one exactly where the deed said they'd be. Every single one of these structures, David said, pointing at the pavilion, the playground, the paths, sits on my client's private property. Not close to the line. Not borderline. Fully, completely on his land. The crowd erupted. Not angry at me. Angry at the board. A man in the third row stood up. "You spent $150,000 of our money without verifying who owned the land." A woman near the front, "How is that even possible?" Another voice, "Did anyone actually check the deed?" Linda's hands were shaking so badly the scissors rattled. "We did check. Our surveyor confirmed." "Your surveyor was wrong," David said flatly. "And my client notified you. Multiple times. Before construction began." Commissioner Alvarez turned to someone sitting in the front row. A man in a suit I hadn't noticed before, now looking like he wanted to disappear. "You're the HOA's legal counsel." The man stood slowly. Face red. "I am." "Did you verify property ownership before construction began?" Silence. The lawyer's face got redder. He glanced at Linda. Back at Alvarez. "We relied on the survey provided by the HOA. Did you personally verify the deed?" Her voice was sharp now. "No." "Did you check county records?" "No." "Did you respond when this man's attorney sent you documentation proving ownership?" The lawyer's jaw tightened. "We disputed the validity of." "That's not what I asked. Did you verify the competing claim before continuing construction?" "No." Alvarez looked disgusted. She turned to Linda. "Ms. Harmon, how many times did this man contact you before construction started?" Linda opened her mouth. Closed it. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered urgently in her ear. She shook her head. He whispered again, more insistent. "Ms. Harmon." Alvarez repeated, voice harder. "I don't recall the exact number of." "I do," I said. My voice was steady now. The fear had burned off, replaced by something stronger. "I called your office 4 times. Sent 3 emails with my deed attached. Came to your office in person and showed you the deed. You told me it was outdated. You said your survey was right and I was wrong. You threatened me with trespassing charges if I interfered with construction." Jennifer pushed forward with her camera crew. Microphone extended. "Sir, you're saying you notified the HOA multiple times and they built anyway?" "Yes." "Do you have proof of that communication?" David held up his phone. "Every email. Every certified letter. Every phone log. All documented and time-stamped." Another reporter, "Ms. Harmon, why didn't you stop construction when the property owner objected?" Linda's face was red now. Blotchy. She looked at her lawyer. He shook his head firmly. She ignored him. "This is a setup. He's trying to extort money from us. We invested in good faith and now he's..." I sent you my deed before you poured the first foundation, I said, louder now. Firmer. You ignored it. You built anyway. You threatened me with arrest. And now you're calling this extortion? The crowd wasn't just murmuring anymore. They were angry. At Linda. At the board. Residents who'd paid HOA dues funding this disaster were realizing what had been done in their name. Someone yelled from the back, "You used our money for this." Another voice, "How much are we getting sued for?" A third, "I want the whole board to resign." Jennifer turned back to me. "What do you want? Financial settlement? Compensation for the property damage?" I looked at the pavilion. At the playground. At the walking paths carved into what used to be my woods. At the plaque declaring this was Summit Ridge's gathering place. 12 trees had been cut down. Half an acre destroyed. My peaceful escape turned into a construction zone without my permission. "I want my land back," I said. "I want every structure removed. I want the land restored to its natural state. And I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else." Linda's lawyer grabbed her arm. Pulled her toward the parking lot. She resisted, trying to speak, but he cut her off harshly. Whispered something urgent in her ear. She went pale and let him pull her away. The other board members stood there like deer in headlights. Lost. One of them, an older man with gray hair, stepped forward hesitantly. "We didn't know. I swear, we trusted Linda to handle the legal side. We had no idea." "You're on the board," David said, voice cold. "You approved the expenditures. You signed off on contracts. You're personally liable." The man's face went gray. He sat down hard on one of the folding chairs. Another board member, a woman in her 50s, looked like she might cry. "We're going to lose our homes, aren't we?" David didn't answer. Didn't need to. Councilmember Johnson stood up. "I'm calling an emergency county review of this project. All permits issued based on false information are void. Construction needs to be immediately halted." "It's already finished," someone muttered. "Then it needs to be removed," Johnson said firmly. "And the HOA will be responsible for all costs." The crowd was in chaos now. Residents arguing with each other. Some defending the board. Most demanding resignations. Cameras capturing every second. I stood there in the middle of it all, folder still in my hand, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. David appeared at my side. Put a hand on my shoulder. "You did it." My knees almost buckled. Not from fear anymore. From the weight of it all finally lifting. I'd reclaimed my land. Not in a courtroom after years of litigation. Right here. Right now. In front of everyone who needed to see it. Commissioner Alvarez approached me. Extended her hand. "I'm sorry this happened. The county will be investigating how permits were issued without proper ownership verification." I shook her hand. "Thank you." She lowered her voice. "For what it's worth, you handled that with a lot of courage. Most people would have given up." After she walked away, I looked at David. "What happens now?" "Now." He smiled slightly. "Now they panic. Their insurance company will get involved. Their lawyers will scramble. And within a week, maybe less, they'll come to us begging for a settlement." "What kind of settlement?" "Full restoration. Full compensation for damages. Legal fees. And maybe, if we push, punitive damages for ignoring your documented objections." I looked back at the pavilion. At the playground. At families who'd been happily playing there 20 minutes ago, now packing up and leaving in confused silence. Linda had built this to prove she could do whatever she wanted. To show that money and confidence could override truth and law. She'd been wrong. And now everyone knew it. The ceremony didn't end. It exploded. Residents swarmed the remaining board members. Angry voices overlapping. How could you not check? Where did our money go? Who's getting sued? Media crews pushed forward, cameras rolling, trying to get statements from anyone who'd talk. I stood off to the side with David, watching it unfold. My hands had stopped shaking, but my whole body felt like it was vibrating. Adrenaline crash. Relief. Exhaustion. All hitting at once. We need to leave, David said quietly. Before this gets worse. We walked to the parking lot. 3 reporters followed, shouting questions. David handled them. Professional. Firm. My client will provide a statement through proper channels. Right now, we're pursuing legal remedies. I got in my truck. Sat there for a minute, engine running, staring at the pavilion through the windshield. People still arguing. The ribbons and banners that had looked celebratory an hour ago now felt like crime scene tape. My phone buzzed. Text from my sister, "You're on the news. Are you okay?" I texted back, "Yeah. I'll call later." I drove home in silence. Couldn't process any of it yet. The emergency HOA meeting was called for 8 p.m. that same night. David and I showed up at 7:45. The community center was packed. Standing room only. Residents from the ceremony. Others who'd heard. Everyone angry, confused, demanding answers. Linda wasn't there. Her lawyer sent a letter. She was under medical distress and unable to attend. The remaining board members sat at the front table looking like they wanted to disappear. The interim president, the older man from the ceremony, read a prepared statement. The board has reviewed the documentation presented today. We acknowledge there may have been errors in the property survey. We are working with legal counsel to. May have been, someone shouted. He had a deed. County records confirm it. How much is this going to cost us? The room erupted. The president tried to regain control. Failed. Finally called for a vote. All in favor of removing Linda Harmon as HOA president, effective immediately. Every hand shot up. Not a single abstention. Motion passes. Ms. Harmon is removed. I watched it happen and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just hollow. Removing her didn't undo the damage. Didn't bring back 12 oak trees. Didn't erase 8 months of stress and $15,000 in legal bills. David stood. My client will be filing a formal lawsuit Monday morning. Trespassing. Destruction of property. Construction without permission. Will be seeking full damages and immediate injunctive relief requiring removal of all structures. A woman in the front row, the treasurer, went pale. How much? $200,000 in damages. Plus the cost of removing structures and restoring the land. Plus legal fees. The room went silent. That'll bankrupt the HOA, someone whispered. David's expression didn't change. You built on his land. You were warned multiple times. You proceeded anyway. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Board members arguing with residents. 3 of them resigned on the spot. Just stood and walked out. By 10 p.m., the HOA had retained new legal counsel. A firm specializing in real estate litigation. Expensive. Aggressive. Settlement negotiations started 2 days later. Their opening offer came via email. The HOA proposes purchasing the disputed parcel for $300,000. Structures remain in place. All parties release further claims. I read it at my kitchen table. My jaw clenched so hard I could feel the pressure in my skull. My hands started shaking again, not from fear this time. From rage. They wanted to buy my land so they could keep their park. Like this was just a transaction. Like I'd been negotiating from the start instead of begging them to stop trespassing. David called 5 minutes later. You saw the offer? Yeah. What do you want to do? Tell them no. The land's not for sale. They're going to fight. They've already spent $150,000. They don't want to tear it down and pay you too. Then they should have verified ownership before they started building. David was quiet. This is going to get expensive. They'll drag it out. Try to make it cost you so much you settle just to end it. How much more can I afford? He paused. You've spent close to $15,000. If this goes to trial, you're looking at another $30,000 to $40,000. My stomach dropped. $40,000. Money I didn't have. But I'd come this far. Counter with $200,000. Full demolition. Land restoration. I'll come down if I have to, but start high. David exhaled slowly. Okay. Their response came the next day. Rejected the amount. Offered $100,000 for an easement allowing the park to remain with public access. I wanted to throw my phone. The back and forth continued for 2 weeks. Each offer insulting. Each delay costing more legal fees. I stopped sleeping. Lost more weight. Started getting tension headaches that wouldn't quit. Then the media changed everything. Local news ran the full story. Within days, regional outlets picked it up. Then it went national. HOA builds $150,000 park on strangers' land after ignoring warnings, was shared thousands of times on social media. Comment sections exploded. Most people supported me. Some called me greedy for not just letting families enjoy the park. That one stung more than I expected. But the attention worked. The county building inspector showed up at Summit Ridge. David had requested the inspection after we discovered the permits were based on the faulty survey. The inspector reviewed everything. Found the permits were invalid once county records confirmed I owned the land. He gave the HOA 30 days to remove the structures or face daily fines of $1,000. That broke them. Their lawyer called David within 24 hours. Requested an in-person meeting. We sat across a conference table from 3 board members and 2 lawyers. Nobody looked happy. Our clients are prepared to settle, their lead attorney said. Voice flat. Defeated. Structure removal. Land restoration. $175,000 in damages. Public apology issued to residents acknowledging the error. David looked at me. I nodded. My client accepts on one condition, David said. Payment in full before demolition begins. Once structures are removed and land is restored to our satisfaction, we'll sign the release. They agreed. The check cleared 4 days later. $175,000. I paid David his fees, $28,000 total. Paid off the credit card debt I'd racked up. Put the rest in savings. After 8 months of fighting, bleeding money, losing sleep, I was finally whole again. Sort of. Demolition started the following Monday. I drove out to watch. Had to. Needed to see it come down with my own eyes. The excavators that had built the pavilion now tore it down. Cedar beams cracking. Stone pillars toppling. The playground dismantled piece by piece. Gone in 3 days. Then they removed the walking paths. Brought in topsoil. Graded it smooth. Seeded it with native grass. I stood at the property line watching workers restore what Linda had destroyed, and I felt something complicated. Not joy. Not satisfaction. Something sadder. It would take years for this land to look like it had before. The 12 oak trees would never come back. Not in my lifetime. Maybe not ever. But it was mine again. Clear. Undisputed. Protected. The public apology came as a letter mailed to every Summit Ridge resident and posted on their website. It acknowledged the survey error, the failure to verify ownership, and the decision to proceed despite documented objections. It didn't mention Linda by name. Didn't need to. The HOA sued her separately. Negligence. Breach of fiduciary duty. Mismanagement of funds. She settled out of court 6 months later and moved out of state. I heard through David she'd lost most of her savings in legal fees and settlement costs. I should have felt vindicated. Mostly I just felt tired. 3 weeks after demolition finished, I drove out to the property. First time in months I'd gone just to visit. Not to document. Not to fight. Just to be there. I walked the boundary line. Every stone marker still in place, exactly where they'd been for over 50 years. The land was raw. Scarred. But healing. I stood in the clearing where the pavilion had been and realized something. This fight was never really about the land. It was about the principle. About not letting someone take what's yours just because they have more money, more confidence, more power. Linda thought she could ignore me. Thought I'd give up. Thought the cost of fighting would break me. She'd been wrong. And standing there on my 5 acres, battered but still mine, I finally understood what my aunt had left me wasn't just property. It was a lesson: some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. For the first time in 8 months, standing on that land didn't make my chest tight. It just felt like home. The land looked strange without the pavilion. Empty in a way that should have felt peaceful but just felt raw. Like a scar that hadn't healed yet. I visited every few days during restoration. Watched crews spread topsoil where the playground had been. Watched them plant saplings, young oaks and pines, where mature trees had stood for decades. The trees would take 30 years to look like anything. I'd be in my 70s before they provided real shade. But at least they were there. Growing. Proof the land could recover. For weeks after demolition finished, I got a call from the new HOA president. A woman named Carol. She'd been elected after the entire previous board resigned. "I know this is probably the last thing you want," she said, "but I'd like to meet. If you're willing." We met at a coffee shop. She was maybe 60, gray hair, kind eyes. Brought another board member with her. "First, I want to apologize," Carol said. "What Linda did was inexcusable. You were wronged." I listened. "We've been working to clean up the mess. New bylaws. New oversight. Making sure this never happens again." She hesitated. "Some residents have asked, the walking paths that were on your land. Is there any chance you'd consider allowing a small easement? A trail?" I talked to David. He drew up an agreement. Very specific. Very limited. A 10-foot wide path along the eastern edge. HOA maintains it. My ownership clearly stated. Revocable if violated. I signed it. Not for Linda. For the families who just wanted a place to walk. The path reopened a month later. Smaller. Simpler. I saw people using it sometimes. Parents with kids. Couples with dogs. They'd wave. Respectful. Grateful. A few residents stopped by to apologize. Said they'd believed Linda when she painted me as the problem. Said they felt terrible. I accepted their apologies. Most of them were just trying to live their lives. They'd trusted their board. That trust got abused. One evening, 6 months after everything, I was walking the property line when I found one of the old stone markers. Moss-covered. Half-buried. I knelt and cleared the dirt from the carved numbers. 58 years old. Placed by someone who knew boundaries mattered. I pulled out my phone. Took a photo. Sent it to David, still here. Still right where they've always been. He replied, that's the whole case in one picture. I stood there as the sun dropped below the trees. The land was quiet. Healing. Mine. I thought about everything that had happened. The fear. The anger. The moment standing in front of 200 people saying, I own this land. The most powerful thing wasn't the lawsuit. Wasn't the settlement. It was standing up when it mattered most. For the first time in a year, sitting on that land, I felt something I hadn't felt in far too long. Peace.